Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Brewers Minute. So this week, we're going to jump into a really controversial, and I don't really understand why it's controversial, but a controversial topic here in the Magic world, and that is the idea of net decking. So some people hate the idea of net decking, some people love the idea of net decking, but what we're going to talk about today is why you, as a brewer, because this is a series about brewing after all, why you should net deck and the value of net decking from a brewer's perspective. So a quick reminder before we break down why brewers should net deck, if you enjoy Brewers Minute and the other series here on the channel, it would be amazing of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button down in the corner of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So let me say this right away first. I don't think that you can be a successful brewer without net decking. I also don't think that brewing and net decking are in conflict or against each other, which is why I think the whole argument over brewing and net decking is absurd. People tend to be on this one side or another. I'm a brewer, I'm a net decker, you're a dirty net decker, you're a filthy casual. All that is absolutely silly because those two things work together, in my opinion. Your net decking is a necessary part of being a good brewer, and being a good brewer and having that more in-depth, understanding of how a deck works and functions that you get from actually building decks makes you a better net decker. These things go hand in hand. They're not fighting each other. So first off, probably the easiest way to look at this from my perspective is my personal story of getting into Magic and also getting into brewing. So I started playing Magic, like I'm sure a lot of other people, as a super casual. I had a friend, had a big box of cards. We threw those cards together into decks, if you want to call them that. They weren't like decks that are going to win a tournament or anything, but there were cards of the same color that maybe sort of interacted with each other. And we played against each other because it was a fun game and it was enjoyable. Eventually, I got interested in the more competitive side of Magic when I got on Magic Online. I realized, you can win prizes if you do well in leagues or in daily events. And you have these tournaments that kind of incentivize you to be more competitive. And when I realized that, and I've always been a competitive person and enjoyed that aspect of games, trying to win is fun. I love the casual aspect too, but I do enjoy playing a tournament and trying to get a good record. And when I realized that, that's when I was a full-on net decker. Yes, I still played casual games with my friends for fun. That was a whole different thing. But when I was playing on Magic Online, I would take a deck list, a successful deck list that looked cool or looked powerful, and I was to the point where I wouldn't even want to change a card. I was afraid that me, not knowing much about building real decks as far as decks that are going to play in tournaments and try to win prizes, I was afraid that if I changed a single card, one card, I would somehow mess up the deck and make it worse and ruin the whole thing. So when I first started playing that way, I would not even change a card. Even if I thought it was a great idea, I was like, these people that built this deck, they must know better than I do, because I'm not very experienced at this, not very good at this, and I don't want to mess it up with my stupidity when it comes to these things. So that's how I started. Then eventually, I kind of got over that and became a tuner, where I would still start with someone else's deck, but I think, maybe this card will fit well. Maybe I can change this removal spell. And, slowly started changing little bits here and there. And then eventually, as you start doing that, you suddenly realize, this deck doesn't look a lot like the original. Maybe you change one or two cards at first. Then it's a whole playset of cards. Then it's two playsets. And eventually you're kind of building your own deck from someone else's deck. And once you get to that point, then you're like, I bet I can just build my own deck from scratch. I've seen enough of these decks. I've changed enough cards in these decks that I bet I can start with a blank page and write out 60 cards that'll work together. And then that's the point where you finally, become a brewer. So that was my progression, and I really 100% truly believe that if I never net decked, I wouldn't be a good brewer. I don't even know if I'd be a brewer at all. If I didn't play other people's decks first, and the knowledge that I accumulated from doing that, I would not be able to be doing budget Magic, or against the odds, or making semi-functional fun decks for people to watch. It just doesn't work. The way I look at it is, not to go back to this again, I go back to this all the time with music, but can you be a good brewer without net decking? And to me, that question is like, can you be a good musician without learning on other people's songs? Like, if you never played anyone else's music, would you be a good musician? I don't think so. I don't think it works that way. I don't think that without learning from the accumulated knowledge of the generations before you that have been doing the same thing, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Like, sure, maybe. I mean, you can say, I never played anyone else's deck. I never played anyone else's song. And, just kind of slam around and make some noise on your guitar or throw together a pile of cards and jam it against your friend. But if you're really serious about it, that's a necessary step to getting to where you want to go. You need to learn from other people, and that's the way you do it. In music, you play other people's songs when you're learning. In Magic, you play other people's decks. It's the same exact thing. So I think it's so silly for people to view it as these competing forces in net decking versus brewing. Instead, it's a progression that you go through, and there's no right or wrong answer. They work hand in hand, and it's different ways of making yourself better at the game. So I think as far as specifics, there's a couple of big things that net decking gives you as a brewer. And these are things that are great when you're starting out, but they're also super helpful even as an experienced brewer. Net decking helps you learn card archetypes. You learn burn spells, removal spells, things that are going to show up in every deck, and you learn about which ones are best for the format, and you kind of start with those slots in your deck. If you're playing a red deck in Modern, from playing other people's decks, you automatically know I'm starting with 4 lightning bolts. That is already something you know from playing other people's decks, when if you were jumping into building a red deck in Modern without ever having played anyone else's decks in the history, you might not get to lightning bolt and figure that out. So you learn these things that improve your own deck building. It also helps you learn how to construct a deck. You learn, well, I need some removal. I probably want some card draw. I need an even mix of things on my curve. I can't just play all 4 drops. These are things you learn for playing other people's decks, and then you put them into your own decks. It also helps you learn deck archetypes. A great example of this is 2-Tick Red, the deck we played on Budget Magic a little while ago. I built that deck from scratch, sat down with a blank deck list, filled in the cards, built the deck, but I built that deck with a ton of accumulated knowledge from red decks over the history of my time in the game, and even before that from my own research. You learn, I need these burn spells. I need lots of 1-drops. So while you're building a new deck, you're doing it within this like historical context or framework. And again, it's like writing a song. You listen to other people's music, and then you build off that with your own thing, and that's how you create something new. The idea that you just sit down for the first time and say, I'm going to build a good Magic deck is absolutely absurd. That's just as silly as saying you're going to sit down and write a masterpiece with the very first song that you write. You learn from other people's stuff, and then you put that into your own stuff and build off of the knowledge and what you learned about other people's stuff, and that's how you build your own awesome thing. So that's my take. If you are someone who wants to be a brewer, I heavily encourage you to net deck as much as possible. I think that is how you learn how to be a good brewer, is by playing other good decks. Just like you learn to be a good writer by reading great books, you'll learn to be a great musician by playing great songs. Magic is no different, and the idea that you shouldn't do that if you want to be a brewer, or as a net decker you shouldn't brew, is absolutely absurd. They go hand in hand, and by mixing those two things together, you benefit both sides of your game. Playing other people's decks improves your own decks. Building your own decks improves your ability to play other people's decks. And in the end, from a meta perspective, you're a better Magic player as a result of doing both of those things. So that's my take on why you, as a brewer, should be playing other people's decks. You are hindering yourself greatly if you have an attitude that I'm a brewer, I'm never going to play anyone else's decks. Your decks will be worse, way, way worse, because of that attitude. And it's frankly very foolish. So anyway, I hope this didn't come across as too harsh. Play other people's decks, learn from them, take that knowledge, put them into your own decks, and your own decks will be better as a result. It works hand in hand, everyone. Anyway, that's been our Brewers Minute for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.